Hey, hi there. I'm Bill Boggs. I want to thank you for subscribing to Bill Boggs TV and take just a moment to tell you about my new satirical novel, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, as told to Bill Boggs. It's about a very funny canine who becomes a big TV and internet star. They're telling me it's laugh out loud humor, and we have a politically incorrect humor warning on the cover, and critics seem to like that. So please consider ordering. Was I pleading with you? Please consider ordering The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog on Amazon right now, and Spike and I will thank you. Hey, hi there. I'm Bill Boggs. I want to thank you for subscribing to Bill Boggs TV and take just a moment to tell you about my new satirical novel, The Adventures of Spike.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. And today, boy, do we have a celebration. We have the one and only television legend. I know that he thinks he's a legend. I think he's a legend. Everyone else knows that he's a legend. It's the one and only Bill Boggs. Hello, Bill.
No legends. That just means you've lived a long time, man. Thank you very much.
No. I consider myself a legend in my own mind.
Well, me too, of course, in my mind. It's good to see your handsome face again. How are you doing in the midst of everything we've been going through?
Well, I'm going to ask you the questions. I'm doing fine. How does it feel to be on the other side of the fence?
We haven't seen each other for a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you were down in Florida with Lady Jane, is that correct?
I'm still here. Yeah, we decided, Richard, that, when things really struck at the end of March, April, and everybody was thinking, whoa, what's going to happen to us? We decided that we weren't going to race back to New York. So that's where we are right now. We're here. This is our Palm Beach pad. There's a little view of it. Oh, yeah, look at, there we go. This, by the way,
wow.
That's a 1920s mattress, right? That is put together with a box spring that has like 50 concave mirrors on it. Convex going out. And we
that, of course, is Lady Jane, who is going to be helping you through this.
Well, no, where is she?
Oh, you look great. It's good to see you. And your pants go with my shirt.
Yeah, that's right. Look at the shorts. There they are.
Yeah, fabulous.
Oh, boy, this is good. I told you, I've been looking forward to this all day.
Well, I have too. Now, you were in New York, or were you already in Florida when the shutdown began?
No, we were down there for what they call, what they call the season. We have an apartment here in Palm Beach, and I took the camera off. Right out there is a little forest, and then the beach is over there. So we're in a building, and it's a very nice place. 2-bedroom apartment. What I like about it is right on the beach, so you get tremendous air coming off the Atlantic. And so we were here. We've been down there since when? December, right, Jane?
November.
Yeah, November. We went out to LA, had a wonderful trip to the West Coast, Palm Springs. We had lunch with Lucy Ornez and name dropping. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. One of my favorite places in the world is Palm Springs.
Oh, we had a great time. Saw Jack Jones, one of my favorite singers at the McCallum Center.
How is Jack doing, by the way?
I talked to him the other day. Another name drop. Sorry.
Yeah.
He's going to be on my Trap live show. he seems to be doing well. He's cut a jazz album, and they're mixing it now. So we're going to be hearing from Jack. He's a wonderful musician.
Well, I mean, Jack and I, we met many, many years ago. We stayed in touch, and we're still Facebook friends. So drop my name with him. I'd love to have him on, to do something with him.
Oh, he's going to do my Trap Live show, and at that time, when we get that set up, I'll mention it. He will have
everyone about your Trap Live show, because that's on YouTube, and you have your own YouTube channel, so that people can go there and see. What do you think of all this new technology? Of course, your television show, you began in High Point in the early 70s, and then you moved to New York. And I don't think there's anyone that you didn't interview. Was there ever an interview that was the one that you wanted to go after that you didn't get?
Well, always being right there at Channel 5, WAW at the time. Now it's Fox, Channel 5. Although I was there for 2 years at Fox. We didn't live far away from Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and see her in the neighborhood, but she was a pretty elusive person. And then I wrote to John and Yoko. Obviously, God bless John Lennon. And John Lennon wrote, "Would that I could find this letter." He wrote me a really nice letter with a cartoon at the bottom saying, "I watch you several days a week, but I'm just not going to appear on television." So I would say John and Jackie O would be two right off the top of my head. I would have really enjoyed interviewing John Lennon.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever interview any of the other Beatles?
No, I didn't. I have stories about them, but I never interviewed them. They're never passing through. Never had somebody to promote. Our house in East Hampton is not really too far from Paul McCartney. Oh, there goes another one. But I'm still waiting to see Sir Paul. I go into a record shop all the time, and he's known to frequent it. I just would like to see him and say hi. He's probably one of the most famous, recognizable people in the world. Although I must say, if he's watching now, Ringo has always been Ringo to me is just this cool guy. Comes out. Yeah.
Now, I think it was it 2 years ago that we were at your home in East Hampton?
Well, Three.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You were telling me when we were at your home 3 years ago about
right.
Spike the Wonder Dog, which we're going to get to in a few minutes.
It was you and Daniel, correct?
Yes, that's right.
We had, I'm glad you brought it up. We had such a wonderful coffee and muffins around our kitchen table. And that's when I saw, and quite serious, what a wonderful conversationalist you are.
Thank you. I appreciate
that. A lot to the table, really. In addition to the muffins that you bring a lot to the table. Yeah, that was 3 years ago. And at that time, I was deep into probably the first part of the creation of the book you see there on the screen. It's a satirical novel. It's just released a week ago. It has elements of memoir in it. It's narrated by a dog, so it's essentially a dog, like The Art of Racing in the Rain, or A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Life, The Call of the Wild, who's telling the story, And the dog has an observational eye. Just take a minute, because you're a creative person. I think you'll dig this. When I did my show in North Carolina, Southern Exposure, before coming to New York, I actually had.
Are you originally from North Carolina?
I'm a Philadelphian.
Okay.
So I still bleed Phillies red.
How did you end up in High Point?
Well, I started my career in comedy with managing and producing a wonderful comedy team, Tom Patchett and Jay Tarsis, who were like a Nichols and May. They gave up performing, focused just on writing. They're brilliant writers, and ended up writing significantly for Bob Newhart and Mary Tyler Moore, and Days and Nights and Molly Dowd created Alf and Buffalo Bill, loosely based on me, I think. And then I split up with them to take advantage of the first opportunity to be on a show in Philadelphia once a week as Mr. Weekend, and then associate producer of that show. So for 2 years, I got good experience in Philadelphia on a show, although my initial experience was like as a crew member at the station across town and then a talent coordinator. So I came up from a guy who was running teleprompter, talent coordinator, associate producer on once a week, and I wanted to have my own show.
Mhm.
So I made I'm a firm believer in resolve, in the word resolve, and what it means, and in the application to apply yourself to that resolve. So I made a New Year's resolution going into 72 that I would go anywhere in America to get my own show. And I found out about some wonderful fellow named Mike Steyer. They were auditioning for a talk show host in High Point, North Carolina, an ABC affiliate. I went down and I beat out 15 people. I got the job. And so for 3 years, I ran the show. Richard Baker, who became my business partner in Boggs Baker Productions, was my intern. I mean, I had an intern who ended up running associate producer of Live in Lincoln Center. Anyway, on that show, I had my own dog. And actually, I can show you a picture here. There was this article, if I can get it up to show it. Oh yeah, that's it. That's a puppy.
Wow.
That's an actual dog, Spike, who became Spike the Wonder Dog. The dog was like Chris Rock or Jerry Lewis in a dog. It was unbelievably funny. He was on the show, Richard, and got 5-to-1 fan mail on me. People were sending my dog pictures of their dog. I think he was going to autograph them and send them back. Just before coming to New York, he got killed by a drunk driver. Run over. Right. So all these years later, when I had the idea, after my last TV show went off there, I'm going to write another novel. If I would do this. What if Spike hadn't gotten killed? And what if Spike had come to New York in today's world, not back then, and become a big TV star with a talk show host master like me? So it follows the arc of my career in the present day. And Spike, the voice of the dog, this is the main thing I want to tell you as a creative person. As I began to write on the same MacBook Air that I've got in front of me right now, the voice of this dog transmuted itself onto the page. And suddenly I was writing in a voice I had never spoken in or written in. And that was the voice of a highly comedic, observational comedian like a Jerry Seinfeld. So he narrates the stories. Long answer, but that's the root of the creative process.
Now, we've got a lot of people who are tuned in right now. And one of the people is Bobby Horowitz. And she asked if you remember the time that you knocked her out.
Well, she was knocked out on several occasions. The time I knocked her out. Yeah, the time I knocked Bobby Horowitz, is that the time I actually knocked her over? I don't think it's the time that I went to the Rainbow Room to see Lainie Kazan with 5 people, and someone had made pot brownies, and we all had a little bite, except one person who became a huge famous person, ate 2 brownies, passed out in a paranoid state in the middle of Lainie's 5th song, and I had to pick this woman up and carry her out of the Rainbow Room while people were applauding, both me and Lainie. It wasn't that. I don't know. I don't remember how I knocked her out.
I'm sure Bobby will tell us. Now, you've written other books as well. Is this your 3rd or 4th book?
It's my 3rd book.
Third book.
The first book was a novel. Second book was a self-help book, and I'm happy to say they've all been published by major publishing houses. Although not easy to get a deal, Richard. Ooh, not easy.
Now, you mentioned earlier resolve. So you had a New Year's resolution at that time. I have to ask you this. Did you have a New Year's resolution for 2020?
Yeah, my New Year's resolution for 2020 was just basically, I made a resolution that I would start the follow-up to The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog. It was going to pick up a month after the story concludes. Mm-hmm. And I sat down and started it, but I realized, and my son Trevor, whom you met also,
yes,
I mean, Dad, you can't start another book. You have to deal with the promotion. The third handing me the baton. I wrote the book. I got the publishing deal. Promotion is a major job. As Jane would tell you, working sometimes 4 or 5 hours a day doing interviews and stuff.
Now, what was your process in writing this book? Were there specific times that you sat down, or would ideas pop up in your head throughout the day? How did you go about getting to writing the book?
Well, let's talk about ideas first, and then I'll tell you about the process. It won't be a long answer. I always have with me a notebook. This is the current iteration of it. I have notebooks like this.
With John Lennon.
Yeah, I always, and I decorate them with stamps. So you have a Spike stamp, that's the railroad stamp, and then a John Lennon stamp, and there's a Man on the Moon stamp. And on the back, I'm ready to drop another name here. Gregory Hines. Dear
I miss him so much.
Actually, best man in his wedding too. Anyway, so that is where ideas come. I could open this up, and at any place in here, there would be some crazy stuff. We could even try that. So if someone comes to me, I write it down immediately. My high school principal taught us that. If you have an idea, write it down. You don't have to worry about remembering it. The process for this book was, first, as soon as saying to myself, don't worry about how long it's going to take. You're a busy person. Sit down and just see what happens the first day. Don't think of all the days it's going to take to write the book. Just see what happens the first day. And on the first day, the voice came through me, and I was thrilled by it. So with this book, what I did was I wrote in the afternoons. I would make sure I had nothing to do in the afternoon and know, by 4 o'clock I have to be here. And generally about 1 or 1:30, after I finished like going for a swim in the morning, doing other work, and this is pretty much 4 or 5 days a week, I lay down on my bed with the phone away, so I wasn't like, going through things, and I drank an energy drink. It's a Runa. It's not like a chemical drink. It's a tea that's made from a South American leaf, and it's an organic drink. They sell it in the Westerly, which is near where I live, the health food store. And that really perked me up. Then I go to the computer, and I wouldn't let anything interrupt me. I didn't want music in the background. For the most part, Jane, you were not even there when I was writing for the most part.
Yes, I was.
She claimed she was there. Yeah, but there, she wouldn't be on the phone. Yes, I was. She wouldn't be on the phone. Yes, I was. I was there, Bill. I saw the genius at work. I was like Lucy.
Say that.
I was Lucy to your Charlie Brown.
Now, is Lady Jane in the book?
No.
My name is in it.
The photo of me was taken by Jane.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the flap.
My name is in the book.
And her name is in the book. No, there's no character in the book based on Jane. There are characters in the book, Richard, inspired by a lot of people.
No, I was telling you, I had the most, and this is so bizarre. So the Facebook police out there, I always send out invitations for these shows. And then when I reach my maximum number of invitations, I create a Facebook ad. And I could not create a Facebook ad for this because of your disclaimer that this is politically incorrect humor.
Wow, Christ.
Isn't that crazy?
When you look at the unbelievable incendiary things on Facebook, like fixing elections, accusing people of
I want to ask you, what are your thoughts about political correctness and where we are in today's world?
I will comment on political correctness as it applies to humor. Is that okay, Richard? Because that's why I've got a little warning on the cover of the book. In a way, it's going like that. It's saying, hey, if you're so sensitive that a cultural appropriation joke or a joke that objectifies women or something that waffles in and out of a stereotype is going to offend you, then don't read the book. Mm-hmm. I know too many comedians. Well, I don't know enough. I know a lot of comedians that every single comic I know, Richard, is saying, I can get on stage and I'm aware that someone in the audience might be offended by a joke I make about my wife and then vilify me on social media. So here's what I think. I'm a Bill Maher follower in terms of his humor. He once had a show called Politically Incorrect. Political correctness, when it applies to humor, is not a Republican statement. It's not a Democratic statement. It's not left. It's not right. It's what I say is this. We have a healthier country if we can laugh at each other. Mm-hmm. We're a melting pot. Mm-hmm. Remember the old term melting pot, Richard? If we're a melting pot, then let's melt. Now, as we're in this period of hopefully the most heightened sense of awareness we've ever had as a nation about the dreadful things that are happening to Africa, that are happening, that have happened, that have continued to happen to African American people. And we're seeing protests unprecedented in this generation. Let's hope that we can get to a point in the future where we can enjoy laughing at each other. White people can laugh at black people can laugh at white people, we can make jokes about Jewish people without people being so sensitive and so offended. So to finish this tirade, I would say that
I'm loving it. I absolutely am. I agree with you.
I want to say this about that.
Yes.
It's this. When we come out the other side of the pandemic, which is a horribly serious thing for us to be worried about, life and death. When we come out, God willing, the other side of the mountain, I've been to the mountain, when we get to the mountaintop, right, as Martin Luther King said, let's hope that we can take each other less seriously. I mean, I didn't write a book to prove a point, but as I was writing it, I thought, you know what? This is, people could criticize me for this. They could criticize it. And so I thought, you know, there's a warning on the front. If you didn't like what you read, I warned you. But it's not, you know, one of the reviews that we got last week said, oh, it's wildly politically correct. It does this, it does that, but it's never mean-spirited.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When do you think that this shift took place, where people began to get offended by everything that was being said by a comedian?
I think you have to read the book based on the Atlantic magazine article 4 years ago, The Coddling of the American Mind. Mm-hmm. I believe that part of it came out from a generation of students going to colleges who had been so coddled and protected and snowplowed by their parents and helicoptered by their parents, that when they sat in class and they were hearing about rapes and horrible, horrible things, that this upset them so much physically that they had to go leave the classroom for a safe space. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a generational thing. And I think it's a social media, no one's really asked me about this. I think it's a social media thing. Now I'm going to give you a crazy example. You're probably a pretty polite driver. When you drive, you have a car, you have a driver's license, Richard?
I don't drive. Danny drives though.
When
but
you get behind the wheel of the car, you probably are not a wild man. I don't think.
No.
I've been with people who in normal life walking around, they're just nice, they're polite, and they get behind the wheel of the car. Fuck you! What are you doing? I was with a guy. Whoa, where is this? Something happens to them when they get behind, and something happens to people when they get at their typewriter.
You just muted yourself.
Something happens to people when they get to their typewriter, social media, or their phone, that gives them this all-powerful desire to condemn. I see some of the things on my YouTube channel, Bill Boggs TV, which is free. I urge people to subscribe. You mentioned it before. Some of the comments about me, oh my God, the horrible. He wants, literally, I interview with Brooke Shields, who's been a friend of mine since she's 11 years old. He wants to fuck her. That's it. I can tell. It's horrible. I mean, it's stuff, you know. Miles Davis, who came all the way down from New York to Philadelphia because he met me, told me that he'd been watching me for years. I was incredulous. Came all the way to Philadelphia to do a 1-hour interview with me on a show I was doing there. The reaction, what is this asshole doing viewing why would Miles Davis let this? And Miles Davis finished the interview and he said, man, I'm so glad I did that. I always wanted you to interview me. But people project, what did Ram Dass say? All is illusion, Richard. Mm-hmm. People see what they want to see.
I am convinced of that. The way that I look at the world right now is I'm not responsible for what the president does or does not do. I'm not responsible as to whether or not you decide to wear a mask in public. Yeah. I am not responsible for, the actions of a cop in Minneapolis, but I am responsible for how I respond to it. And I don't know what it is in our culture now where everyone feels they have to weigh in on the topic.
Yeah.
If it's something that bothers me, I change the channel. It's as simple as that. And it's not that I'm being blind to it. I just change the channel.
I agree with you there. That's why I said, hey, I put a warning on the cover of the book. A part of the reason I did it was for fun. I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to. But as far as I know, this book, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, as told to Bill Boggs, right now, the dog told me the story, is the only book that ever had a warning on the cover about the humor. And when you read it, you'll see it's all gentle stuff. There's nothing really mean in there. But satire in and of itself, as we all know, is making fun of things, is taking foibles and blowing them up in a way and sending them up that makes us realize a little bit of our ineptitude, the cracks in our armor.
Now, when you sat down to write the book, did you have an outline for the book, or was it just free association as things came into your head? I
knew that the dog. I started the book starts with the dog explaining where he is. I think it says, last night I'm in Madison Square Garden returning Roger Federer's 130-mile-an-hour serve with my head, and now I'm on a dirty floor in a cage growling at two guys named Julio. How did this happen? Then he goes on to explain he figures tomorrow's the last day of his life. He's in grave danger and he's going to die. He says, I got a great story to tell you. And if this is the last day of my life like I figure it is, I'm going to tell you now. So that I knew it was going to start with a dog in peril. I knew that the dog was going to become very famous and be abducted. And by the way, a portion of the proceeds in the book for the sales of the book will go to animal rescue organizations. I always forget to say that. But
I was going to get to that. It was on my list of things to talk about.
In the book. So now, what was your question again? It wasn't about process. It was
about if you had an outline when you sat down.
That was it. And then I knew that I was going to follow the arc of my own career, starting in North Carolina at the same station with the same title show, with two people, characters inspired by two people actually were working there at the time, that I knew I was going to come up to New York and that the host was going to go and Spike and to work on Channel 5 like I did with Midday. And I knew that I was going to let out some stuff through satire that I really thought about sometimes, not every day, but the process of working at Midday was never as enjoyable and I was there almost 13 years, was never as enjoyable for me or as, in many ways, fulfilling for me as the show Southern Exposure was, which is syndicated in the South. And the reason was, and the same thing happens to my protagonist, Bud, who owns Spike, I didn't have the control. I went from producing my own show. You do stage shows, and somebody saying, no, you're not, I'm producing your show. You're going to move this way. You're going to do that way. So people saying, we're producing you. I remember saying, as far as I remember, the only person that ever produced me before was my mother. But I was.
Where were you when I needed you?
Yeah, I was an employee. So I never had, although I contributed, I never had as much control as I thought I should have had in that. And that I send that up a little bit in the book, and I send up crazy guests, people coming on shows to promote stuff. I don't know if you read any book. Did you read the? I
haven't had a chance to get. I have not gotten the book yet.
We're going to get you the book. One guest on, which is sort of now this is like a veiled satire of men, white men, being feeling marginalized, in society. So the guy comes on the show and he's invented this product called the Pants Enhancer. Got that? The Pants Enhancer. And he comes on the show, men feeling marginalized, no longer as important as used to be, need to be the life of the party. The Pants Enhancer is the Pants Enhancer is your answer. A codpiece for the modern man. Then it goes through the whole thing with the host having to put it on that shtick, and it looks like he has a frying pan in his khakis.
Oh my God! Yes, of course.
That's it. See, that's satire. It's a satire of a guest promoting something. It's a satire of marginalized people, and it's a satire of what it would take not to feel marginalized. A codpiece. None of it true, but it's fun. It's fun.
Now, when did you know that the book was completed?
Well, when I wrote, honestly, it cost it. When I wrote the last sentence, I knew it was over. I knew where I was going.
Hmm.
Until the very last sentence came to me, which has to do with the dog Spike's interpretation of the lyrics of a Frank Sinatra song. I won't say which song. There's a lot of music cues that run through the book.
Hmm.
There's a Sinatra song that Spike hears at one point when he's really upset. He's upset. He doesn't want to leave North Carolina. And he hears this song and he thinks, that's just a bunch of sentimental bullshit. I don't believe that. And the very last words are, I hear Frank singing that song again. I hear those words again. And you know what? Frank was absolutely right. So it ends on that thing about the lyrics to a Sinatra song. And honestly, Richard, I have it now. I have a chill because it wasn't my intention. But when it's such a wonderful process, writing, as you well know.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So when that happens, you know it's there. Now, did you have an editor or did you do it all on your own?
Barry Doherty, who is a writer, professional writer, who worked at the Friars Club and is a gentleman with whom I don't know if you ever met him, a wonderful association. Mm-hmm. I sent him the manuscript and paid him to edit it. I also had 8 or 9 people, actually it was 10 people, read the book. And you could have been one of these people. Had you been, I would have said, Richard, I'll take you out to dinner. I want you to read this manuscript, and I'm not looking for praise. I'm looking for what would you say? Creative, positive, not positive feedback. There's feedback. I want feedback. Tell me what you think. Because I wrote this book.
Now, what was your criteria for the people that you chose to do this?
People whose opinions I would trust, and people who would do me the favor of reading 280 pages on their computer in exchange for a dinner, but who wouldn't bullshit me, honestly.
Okay.
And so all 10 of those people, and that took 3 months to get that feedback, all 10 of those people said, laugh out loud funny. You got something here. You know, that really validated me. In the same way that Jerry Seinfeld, and Spike has been compared in a way that Jerry Seinfeld, that observation. Mm-hmm. With Jerry Seinfeld would spend hours and hours testing material before he would shoot his Netflix show, which is on now, 23 Hours a Killer.
I know.
So that to me, when I got that back, I said, okay, I believed in the book. There were times when I was writing the book and we were at the Cafe Carlyle for various shows. I was up there, was able to go at the press table on opening night. I love the Cafe Carlyle.
Oh, me too. Absolutely.
I shot the only existing show there with Bobby Short and Boggs Baker Productions. The only existing.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, there were times I'd have a drink and Jane would have a drink and I'd be right in the process. My belief in my work, I would turn to Jane and say, "The Wonder Dog, Jane, the Wonder Dog."
Mm-hmm.
You know what my fantasy is, Richard? While writing the book, is my fantasy. Write the book, rewrite it, make it as good as possible. Get a publishing deal. Make sure the book sells. Get a back-end deal for a movie. Get a few $100,000 and take a few of my lifelong friends on a 1 week to 10-day yacht trip someplace.
That sounds good. And where are you now with all of that?
Well, I'm working on trying to sell the book.
I want to go back before we get there. When did you know that the book was finished? When did you finish the book?
Yeah. Well, after Barry Doherty edited it, and he found a lot of mistakes, but not, take out this paragraph. No one chopped anything out of the book. Then I went back through it and cut, and also added more humor. And the day before the manuscript had to go in, which was sometime in March, right? The book had been written, Barry went through it a couple of times. I went through it 3 times. The last words I typed in, I thought, wait, I got one. There's a thing where Spike is doing this promotional Christmas show, mm-hmm. and it says, giving away 100 stale, made in China gingerbread houses. I inserted giving 100 stale, made in China, virus-free gingerbread houses. The last words went in. That's when I knew it was over. I couldn't do any more.
So, I mean, do you have a publicist who's working with you on this book, or and what is your game plan in terms of marketing it in the midst of this crazy world that we're living in right now?
Well, I want to say, last week the New York Times said that writers who've released a book in the last month and a half, my book came out last week, were facing insurmountable odds in selling books, insurmountable. So I did 9 shows last week. We've had 4 major reviews, and every one, it's not, there's going to be some clinker.
Knock on wood.
Every one has been raves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all I can do is just do everything that Jeff Abraham, my celebrated publicist who works in the field of comedy, can do. Barry is helping me. My son Trevor is on the Instagram account. It's a lot of fun, which is Spike_Wonderdog on Instagram. I have a fellow up in Canada working Twitter. So I have like 4 people, and Jane, it's every day, is doing something, helping me, calling people. We're doing the best we can. I'm in a period of intense self-promotion. I mean, it's. I wouldn't want to stay like this too long, because I get up to go. There's not a night when I don't get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and immediately
you start thinking about it.
Yeah. So in the creative process, it's a little bit like having, as someone described this to me once, Squire Rushnell, the ABC executive, said, when you're in that zone, it's like having a constant toothache. You're totally aware of what you, and that's where I am right now. That's where I am right. Well, I'd love to do the show with you sometime when I wasn't hawking the product, but I am.
Well, no, this is absolutely fine. I'm thrilled that you're here. There was a time where a Bill Boggs would be booked on Bill Boggs' TV show. Where does one go now to get the word out about their books?
Well, I was on the Philadelphia morning show. I was on a San Diego morning show. I was on a High Point, North Carolina morning show. And I'm endeavoring, wouldn't you think that it was sort of easy for me, who worked at Channel 5 for 13 years, to get on Good Day New York morning show? But so far, no luck. But I sent out another email about that today. I mean, Jesus, here's a novel written. Half of it takes place in Channel 5. You would think we could have some fun with that. Let's see, where else? Boston. I was on a Boston show and a lot of radio shows. Mm-hmm. And next week, we have on Thursday, a big review in Dan's papers. And we just had Henry Magazine, Long Island Advance. So we're chipping away at it, Richard. We're chipping away.
Man, it's something that you constantly have to work at. So do you envision this being a movie, a TV series, or a mini series?
Yes.
Netflix, all of the above.
Yes, something. Well, I've been in show business since I was 23 years old. Content is king these days. Mm-hmm. There's been more of a need for scripted material. And where is it? That's what this is. Mm-hmm. The book has illustrations in it. It has 17 illustrations. And that was Trevor's idea, to put the illustrations in there.
And who did the illustrations?
I found a student. He's out of school. Let me see if I can find one.
Jacob Below.
Yeah, Jacob Below was I'm just looking for it. I didn't want people to think it was a comic book, but here's an illustration. This follows the. Where are we here? See that? Can you see that?
Wow, that's a student.
That's a priest trying to pry the Bible out of Spike's mouth. Spike was wearing
He should have been in Washington last week.
Would you like me to read? Would you like me to read this? What leads up?
No, absolutely. I'd love it.
All right. So they were in High Point, North Carolina, and they come back from being on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and they got big celebrity, and now the ratings are through the roof. And they're in the Bible Belt, which is true. I was down there in the Bible Belt. People used to mail me Bibles inscribed to you, Bill Boggs.
I know High Point, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. And the Furniture Mart in Thomasville. We lived in. So anyway, Spike is lying on the floor. This is it's only the second time I've read for the book. Spike is saying, I've been lying there for a while, and all of a sudden, I'm in the mood for one of my sprints around the block. It took Bud, that's his owner, it took the talk show host. It took Bud a while to adjust to this, but I go out the revolving door and run around the block as fast as I can and come back quite refreshed. So I set out with a Bible in my mouth. He's been chewing on a Bible because there's piles of them around there. I set out with a Bible in my mouth because I like carrying something when I run. It's good for the neck muscles, you know? But the Bible's not heavy enough, so I circle back to the office and dig out a long plastic thing. It's in a box. It's like a bumpy, veiny bone from a box of stuff some sex therapist sent us who's trying to get on the show. So I'm out the door and charging around the block, having some fun because the bone thing's vibrating and tickling my mouth. I started to take a leak on a couple of rocks by a curb, and this guy with a white collar on backwards starts screaming at me to give him the Bible. I look up. I spot a big cross dangling from his neck and figure he's a minister, not some wacko going to a Halloween party. Then he sees the bone thing and yells, "Oh my God, that's a dildo." He's trying to get the Bible away from the dildo. And I'm thinking, Padre, you and your 10 disciples are going to pry open these jaws today. He's screaming and yanking at the Bible. A crowd's gathering and a cop's pointing a gun at me. Like if I don't drop the Bible, he's going to do his civic duty as a cop and blast me off the face of the earth. All right. Someone yells, "Don't shoot him. That's the underdog." So a kid runs to get Bud. Now, one more paragraph. A reporter and crew from the Channel 3, the rival station across the street, show up to video the hunched-over minister wrestling with me and the Bible. Bud comes charging in. I drop the mangled Bible as the dildo goes into overdrive, twisting like a giant pink eel. The minister snatches the Bible and reads, "Dear Bud, care for this holy book. My beloved Aunt Marie served in the Sacred Order of the La Leche Sisters. She read this every night in the nunnery. May it also help you fight temptation by remaining celibate." Bud's got the wriggling dildo in one hand, and he grabs the Bible with the other as the reporter asks, "Well, Bud, what do you want to say about this?"
So I have to ask you, does your mind always think like this, or you blame it all on Spike?
Well, I will say that when you did your show, on Carol Channing, and you wrote that show, you were channeling Carol Channing, right?
Yes.
I was channeling this dog who was like Jerry Lewis or Chris Rock in a dog suit, who was very funny. I don't know how it happened, man. I love that dog. The dog died 4 years ago, but I was channeling a voice that was coming through me. Obviously, technically, it's coming from my imagination, but it was not a way I had ever written in or spoken in before.
No,
I wouldn't have written that like in my journal. That is in the tone of the voice of Spike.
Are there plans for an audiobook of the book?
Yeah, there will be an audiobook. There will be an audiobook. The virus has set that back for a while. Yeah.
Well, I want to, go back, and talk a little bit about the early beginnings of your career. Did your life and your career turn out the way that you had envisioned, or did it completely take a different turn from where you started?
That's a biggie. No one ever asked me that. I think that there was a very strong period of time when I wanted to be an actor. Mm-hmm. I wanted to drop out of the University of Pennsylvania and come to New York and study acting when I was in college, and my mother and my father would not let me do it. So I think that initially I thought I was going to be an actor, Richard. Mm-hmm. And then as I worked my way in television, I always had a lifelong desire to interview people. So I really was thinking of being like a talk show host or an actor. And I realized that being on television as a talk show host would probably be easier route to achieve success, to achieve notoriety, and to achieve an interesting life than coming to New York and jumping in the acting pool. Plus, in my early 20s, I was not a very worldly man.
Mm-hmm.
In New York could have eaten me up and spit me out pretty easily. I would have been affected by that. So, plus there was the Vietnam War. I wouldn't have been in college. That would have been horrible. So it turned out, I will say this, I rarely mention this, but is when I first began my career in show business with the comedy team, I made a resolution to myself, and I wrote it right here on the inside of my head: defy category. To that extent, I have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one, people, Matt Lauer's made billions of dollars as a talk show host. Other writers have done this. Other people on stage have done that. But I don't mean to be bragging, but that's been my.
No, brag away. This is what it's for.
Defy category has been my North Star since I was 24 years old.
And what was the first major interview that you got?
Colonel Sanders.
And how did that come about?
Well, I was doing the show in Philadelphia, which was called McLean and Company. And I was Mr. Weekend. I was associate producer of that show. What happened there was when the host, who was a terrific guy named Bob McLean, and if you want to hear a show business story, I'll tell you one after this. When Bob couldn't go someplace, they sent me. So there was some kind of a junket for Colonel Sanders Fried Chicken. This is 1970, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't go, so they sent me someplace in Kentucky to interview Colonel Sanders, and he was the first person I ever interviewed. Was Colonel
Was it Louisville?
I don't remember. The second,
I was booked in Louisville, and I actually went to the Colonel Sanders Museum. There's a Kentucky Fried Chicken museum, but they don't give away the secret ingredients.
This is your life? You're telling me to go to
life? Yes.
Museum? Jesus Christ, Richard! Come on.
No.
I really feel elevated now you're interviewing.
That was Louisville, Kentucky. So what was the show business story that you wanted to share with us?
Okay. In order to understand this story, you have to know KYW TV in Philadelphia which was a Westinghouse station. In the basement, the Mike Douglas Show, which was a juggernaut show, like the Merv Griffin. Do you remember the Mike Douglas Show?
Yes, of course.
The Mike Douglas Show was a daytime talk show like Ellen DeGeneres. It had huge stars. He had a technique there where they would take, like John and Yoko would be on for a whole week as guest hosts.
I was watching Shirley Bassey, believe it or not, last night on the Mike Douglas Show.
So that was taped in the basement, and that was Mike Douglas, and Mike earning millions of dollars. Now, and Roger Ailes and Woody Frazier were the producers of that show, and Mike Douglas was a highly produced talent. At one point, I went down after a show, and there was a cue card that Ailes had held up that he read. You know what the cue card said? Really? I took that up to the office as a reminder. So we were. Tom Snyder had been on at 9 a.m. in Philadelphia, and he left to go to the West Coast. So now there was an hour between 9 and 10 open, and a new show was going to be created. And Debbie Miller, who had worked for Ailes, who was a young woman who would go on to be the most successful agent in the history of female agent in the history of William Morris. Right now, she's just like a 30-year-old hotshot TV producer with her first show. She hired me to be her associate producer on the proviso that I could be on TV once a week, and then gave me a whole pile of tapes to look through to see if I could find like candidates to be the host. So we found this really handsome guy, Irish guy named Bob McLean, who bore a physical resemblance in a way to Mike Douglas. They were both Irish, brown hair, sort of ruddy complexion. So during the summer, when the Mike Douglas Show was on a 2-week hiatus, we started doing McLean and Company. Okay. So we're on the air for 2 months, and we're doing very well, having a great time. And then the Mike Douglas Show comes back into production. And one morning, Mike Douglas comes strolling through the lobby, and he looks up at the TV set on the lobby at KYW, and he sees this young, handsome, younger version of him up there on a morning show. And he does not like that. He does not like the fact that now there's a guy who has come down from Toronto, get this, with his wife and 2 children, sold their house and moved to Philadelphia. Now it's September and stuff starts happening, like the Douglas Show could come up and take any of our guests. Like we had Joey Bishop once, and they come up and just took it off the board because they wanted Joey Bishop the next day. But one of our female producers slept with Joey Bishop that night and got him to come back on our show. It actually worked. It actually happened. And he came, he wouldn't do the Douglas Show because that happened. We didn't ask her to, she volunteered. So back to it. So it's Christmas time, right? We're doing well. We're all sitting around exchanging gifts. Guess who my intern on that show is? Nancy Myers, who went on to write Private Benjamin, all those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we're exchanging gifts, and Bob is there, and the phone rings. Oh, he's all excited. They call him upstairs. This is his Christmas bonus, he figures. He comes back, as white as my shirt. Oh, what is it? They fired me. What? Yeah, I have to clear out the office today. This is December 23rd. We're shocked. I mean, literally, one of the rare times I actually hugged somebody. It was horrible. All of us. So he put his stuff in 2 Christmas bags. The stuff was in his desk that it had the gifts in it. And Debbie Miller and I walked him out to the front of Walnut Street. And now it's snowing on December 23rd. And we watched him walk away in the snowstorm. And I turned to Debbie and I said, what the hell kind of business are we getting involved in here? And I found out later from Roger Ailes that Mike Douglas had him fired. Went home on the day before Christmas Eve to tell his wife and 2 children he had been fired.
Wow.
That's a tough one.
And what happened to him? Where'd he go?
He went back to Toronto and was on radio and television in Toronto. I actually get upset when I tell that story.
It's a terrible story. Well, has there ever been an interview that you, and you don't have to mention names,
okay,
that you really looked forward to, and then it just did not turn out the way that you had hoped?
Bob Hope canceled on me 3 times. Is that enough? So it didn't turn out the way. It never even happened.
So you never interviewed him ever?
No. 3 times he was confirmed. 1, 2, 3. 3 times he canceled. That was pretty upsetting.
No, you mentioned earlier the interviews that you wanted that you didn't get.
Right.
But the Holy Grail interview, would that have been Frank Sinatra?
Yes. Meeting Frank Sinatra, being introduced to Frank by Julie Rizzo as a lifelong Sinatra fan, with my mother, God bless her, being a Bobby Soxer, my father loving Sinatra, my being a Sinatra fan. And at 4:00 Easter Sunday morning in Caesar's Palace, after seeing Elvis early show and Sinatra late show with a group of friends, all who bombed, went back to the room. About 3:15 in the morning, I ran into Julie Rizzo, who knew me from my association with Sammy Davis Jr. And there's a great story there, but I'm not going to tell it. Next time. Ask me.
Next time.
It's a biggie. And asked me if I'd like to meet Frank. And of course I said yes. So he said, come back in 40 minutes at the Galleria Lounge. And I told this story when I did the off-Broadway show, Our Sinatra. I was in that show. So I come back at 4 a.m, and there's Sinatra in his tuxedo and a couple of beautiful babes, a couple of men, big cufflinks, drinking, smoking, 4 a.m. And Julie waits till the right time, and then Frank talks into Frank's ears, explains to Frank who I am. Frank looks up at me because it's like they were on this thing, and I was on the other side of a railing. They were in the lounge, and he says, "Hey, Billy, how you doing?" And we talked for about 10 minutes. And whatever happened during that conversation led Frank to say, Julie says you have a show on Channel 5. No, he didn't say Channel 5. He said a show on 5 in New York. Yeah, this is April. He said, well, I'm going to be in New York in September with Ella and Basie and at the Euro Theater. Maybe I'll come and do your show. And Richard had said, well-told tale. I said,
Mhm.
Frank, I'm not asking for anything. And he took my hand, both my hands. He pulls my hands down. And he looks at me with these cobalt blue eyes and says, "Loco, I know you're not asking for anything. Maybe I'll come." And he did.
And he did. That's
Yeah.
great.
We hit it off. Yeah.
I don't believe this, but we're at the end of our program. And I've got a few closing remarks that I want to say. First of all, I want to thank Casting New Lives and Nightlife Exchange for making this show possible. So thank you both. I end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. So what I want you to do, Bill and Lady Jane, and everyone who's watching, I want you to go to your Facebook page. I want you to look up your 8th friend, and I want you to call
Did you say?
the eighth friend that pops up in your friends list, and give them a call, and just say that I told you to do so.
The 8th friend who pops up on my friends list.
Yes, just call them up and see how they're doing. I want to let everyone know that next Monday I have the one and only Donna McKechnie on the show. So
I interviewed her. I like her.
I love her.
Oh,
And on Wednesday afternoon, we're doing a very special show. We're going to do a celebration of Judy Garland, and we're doing a round table. I've got some great surprise guests on the show, so please tune in. And before we sign off, Bill, do you have any final words regarding the adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog?
yeah, actually, buy the book.
Buy the book.
Orderspike.com. Go to orderspike.com, buy the book, and then tell me what you think. Tell me if you laugh. And by the way, Judy Garland singing "I'll Go My Way" by myself. What a song. What a performance.
Best. Yeah. And, tell them once again about your YouTube channel.
Oh, Bill Boggs TV on YouTube. There's 480 videos there. As recently as interviews with Bobby Rydell. Who was the last show that we did, Jane? Well, anyway, all of my Trap Live shows, I do them on
Judy
Friday.
Gold.
Hmm?
Judy Gold.
Yeah, Judy Gold. We did
Judy.
one show with Judy Gold. I'm going to be in her podcast Wednesday. We've had Ann Hampton Calloway on there. Bobby Rydell, Lucy Arnaz was on.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to 1970, coming up to last Friday, Bill Boggs TV on YouTube. It's free. I ask you to subscribe. It's just a good thing to do.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
wish you much success with this book. I hope that everybody here buys the book, and I will be promoting it as well.
Richard, you're a good man. I look forward to. I really look forward to another visit like we had in our house.
We'll do it.
You bring a lot to the table. Thank you,
Thank
Richard.
you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Love you lots. Goodbye, Jane.
Hey, there she is. There she is, folks. The real star.
Where am I?
Nice angle.
I'm throwing you goodbye kisses. Love you.
Well, love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
What a lovely man he is.
Lovely. So, Bill,